They were the perfect storm of passion and perseverance, two souls who defied the odds and built a love that seemed unbreakable. But beneath the surface, a single betrayal lurked like a ticking time bomb, ready to reduce their world to ashes. How does a love story built on survival and loyalty end in a massacre? What happens when a betrayal so deep breeds a vengeance that cannot be tamed? Before we unravel this tragic tale of love, revenge, and bloodshed, like this video and subscribe for more gripping stories of crime and consequence. Marvina Ross had learned from an early age that love was never given freely, it was something you had to fight for, claw for, and sometimes, even bleed for. Born and raised in the Ninth Ward of New Orleans, she was a child of struggle, molded by the cracked sidewalks and the echoes of gunshots that filled the night air. Her mother, Renetta, was a woman hardened by disappointment, a single mother who shuffled between dead-end jobs and toxic relationships, never able to offer Marvina more than what was absolutely necessary. Affection was a rare currency in their home, and Marvina learned to seek it elsewhere. By the time she was 16, she had already seen too much, love that came with bruises, promises that dissolved like smoke, and men who swore they would stay but always found a reason to leave. She swore to herself that she would never repeat the cycle, but life had a cruel sense of humor. By 19, she was a mother, abandoned by the father of her child before the baby even took her first breath. Tiana became her world, her reason for every long shift, every sacrificed dream. But no matter how hard she worked, how much she fought, the weight of survival never lightened. Then came Khalil Baxter. He was the kind of man who commanded attention the moment he stepped into a room, tall, broad-shouldered, with a presence that made people listen. He wasn't just another street hustler trying to scrape by, he had ambition, a vision that extended beyond the small-time game most men around them played. Khalil had his hands in everything, real estate, auto shops, security businesses, but everyone knew that his true power ran deeper than that. He was respected, feared, and most of all, untouchable. When he met Marvina, she was at her lowest, tired, broke, and desperate for something better. He didn't just offer her love, he offered her protection, stability, a future. For the first time in her life, she wasn't fighting alone. Khalil took Tiana in as his own, vowing to provide for both of them, to give them the life Marvina had only dreamed of. And for a while, it was perfect. Their love was the kind that turned heads, a burning, passionate thing that felt too big for the world to contain. Marvina and Khalil weren't just partners, they were a force. He built a name for himself, expanding his empire, while she became the woman standing proudly by his side, no longer a struggling single mother but a queen in her own right. They threw lavish parties, donated to local charities, and became pillars of the community. To the outside world, they were untouchable. A couple who had beaten the odds, climbed from nothing, and made something extraordinary. But behind the closed doors of their grand home, beneath the picture-perfect surface, the fractures had already begun to form. Khalil was a man who demanded loyalty, not just in word but in action. His love came with conditions, with expectations that Marvina found harder to meet as time went on. The devotion he once showered upon her became something darker, something possessive. And Marvina, who had spent her life clawing her way through hardship, began to wonder if she had traded one kind of prison for another. People whispered, but no one dared to speak too loudly. Because no matter what happened behind those doors, the Baxters were still royalty in their world. And no one questioned royalty. Not yet. Khalil Baxter had spent years perfecting the art of deception. To Marvina, he was her rock, the man who lifted her out of struggle and gave her the life she had always dreamed of. But in the shadows, he was someone else entirely. While she saw a devoted husband and father, the world outside their home whispered different stories, stories of backroom deals, illicit money exchanges, and a double life built on betrayal. The first cracks in their foundation were subtle. Late nights at work turned into unexplained absences. Mysterious phone calls ended the moment she walked into the room. There were rumors, fleeting whispers from jealous women and bitter men, but Marvina never entertained them. She believed in her husband, in the promises he made, in the home they had built. But faith had blinded her, and Khalil knew it. When the police came, they didn't knock. They stormed through the front door with a battering ram, their voices booming as they ordered Marvina to the ground. She was still in her robe, Tiana crying from the top of the stairs, her tiny voice swallowed by the chaos. They pulled Marvina up by her wrists, forcing her outside, her bare feet scraping against the pavement. Neighbors peeked through their blinds, shaking their heads as if they had seen this coming all along. The charges were damning: conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, identity theft. Marvina was speechless, stunned as the officers rattled off accusations she couldn't even comprehend. But the biggest betrayal came when she heard Khalil's name. Not as a suspect, but as a witness, his testimony the linchpin of the case against her. Sitting in the cold interrogation room, Marvina begged for an explanation. How had this happened? Why was her name on accounts she had never seen? Who had planted the evidence in their home? But as the detectives laid it all out, the truth cut through her like a blade. The signatures, the bank statements, the stolen funds, they all led back to her. And Khalil? He had orchestrated it. He had built the trap and watched her walk right into it. From behind bars, she had no choice but to watch as Khalil wiped her from existence. He emptied their accounts, took Tiana, and started over with another woman. Not just any woman, Chantel, her former friend, the one she had confided in during late-night talks about love and trust. They played house in the home Marvina once decorated, raised her daughter like she had never existed. And the world moved on, believing Marvina Ross was nothing more than a criminal who had finally been caught. But Marvina wasn't dead. Not yet. And for what Khalil had done, he would pay. 8 years. 8 years of cold iron bars, of stale air thick with desperation, of nights spent staring at the ceiling, replaying the betrayal over and over. 8 years of rage simmering beneath the surface, waiting for a moment, just one, to tip the scales in her favor. That moment came without warning. The riot started in the East Wing, a brawl escalating into full-scale chaos. Officers rushed in, their batons swinging wildly, but they were outnumbered. Fires burned, alarms blared, and as the prison erupted into anarchy, Marvina saw her chance. She moved fast, slipping through the shadows, dodging bodies, slipping out in the confusion. The moment her feet hit free soil, she didn't look back. No one had seen her. No one would expect her return. By the time the world realized Marvina Ross had vanished, she would already be standing at Khalil's doorstep. She didn't go straight to him. Not yet. First, she needed to see it with her own eyes, the life he had stolen from her, the family he had replaced her with. Her old neighborhood had changed, but her house, the house she had bled for, the house she had made a home, was still there, glowing with warmth and life. It was Christmas Eve. The Baxters were gathered, their laughter spilling into the night air. Candles flickered in the windows, the scent of roasted ham and cinnamon rolling from the kitchen. Tiana, now 16, sat on the couch beside Chantel, unwrapping gifts, the kind of joy on her face that Marvina had once dreamed of giving her. And then there was Khalil. The man who had once sworn to protect her, the man who had set her up and erased her without hesitation. He stood at the center of it all, a king in the empire he had built on her suffering, holding a glass of whiskey, laughing like he had never known pain. He had moved on. He had flourished. He had forgotten. But Marvina had not. Standing in the cold, hidden in the shadows, she watched them. She memorized every face, every movement, every second of their joy. Because soon, it would be gone. They thought she was dead. They had no idea that death would be knocking at their door before the night was over. The front door exploded inward with a deafening crack. Glass shattered, wood splintered, and the warm glow of Christmas lights flickered as a cold wind rushed in. The laughter that had filled the house only moments before turned to piercing screams. Plates crashed to the floor. A child wailed. And there, Standing in the doorway like a spectre risen from the grave, was Marvina Ross. Her silhouette was dark against the twinkling holiday lights, her grip steady on the cold steel of the Glock in her hand. Smoke curled from her lips as she exhaled, her eyes locked onto the man who had stolen everything from her. Khalil. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. His whiskey glass slipped from his fingers, hitting the hardwood floor with a dull clink before rolling to a stop in the spreading pool of spilled liquor. His eyes were wide, his face drained of color, the weight of his sins pressing down on him in real time. And Marvina. The name barely left his lips before the first shot rang out. The bullet tore through his chest, punching through muscle and bone like paper. Blood splattered against the Christmas tree, the festive red blending with the ornaments. Khalil gasped, stumbling back, his knees buckling. His hands, once so quick to betray, clutched at the gaping wound in his chest. He collapsed, gurgling, his breath rattling wetly as crimson pooled beneath him. But Marvina wasn't done. Chantel screamed. She had barely risen from the couch before a second shot silenced her. The bullet tore through her forehead, snapping her head back like a rag doll. Khalil's father lunged, his old fists swinging wildly. But he was slow, too slow. Marvina turned, swinging the butt of the gun with brute force. The crack of his jaw snapping filled the room as he dropped like dead weight, moaning in agony. Footsteps thundered, Marion, Khalil's younger brother, bolting for the back door. Marvina pivoted, her finger tightening on the trigger. The shot was perfect. The bullet tore through his spine, and he let out a strangled scream as he collapsed, his legs twitching uselessly beneath him. He clawed at the floor, dragging himself toward freedom, but there would be none. Renetta, Khalil's sister, was next. She had thrown herself over her son, shielding his tiny body with her own. Her sobs racked her frame, her hands gripping the child's head, whispering desperate prayers. Marvina didn't hesitate. The next 3 shots ripped through both of them, their bodies jerking violently before slumping together in a grotesque embrace. Blood seeped into the cracks of the floorboards, a thick, dark river spreading outward. The scent of iron filled the air, mingling with the holiday cinnamon and pine. And then, silence. Only one remained. Tiana. Marvina turned slowly, her breath steady, the Glock still warm in her grip. The girl stood frozen, her chest heaving, tears streaming down her face. But something had changed. This wasn't the daughter Marvina had once known. The little girl who had clung to her, who had whispered Mama in the dead of night, who had been her entire world. No. This girl stood defiant, her wide eyes filled not with love, but with fear and hate. She saw Khalil as her father. She had erased Marvina from her heart. And Marvina saw it. She had not come back to spare anyone. The final shot was the loudest. Tiana's small frame collapsed, her blood pooling with the others, the last trace of Khalil's legacy erased. Marvina stood among the bodies, the house that once held laughter now filled with nothing but death. The Christmas lights flickered. Somewhere, the sound of sirens began to wail in the distance. She had done what she came to do. And now, the past was buried. The city had never seen a crime so brutal. News of the massacre spread like wildfire, the details growing more horrifying with each report. The Baxters, once a symbol of wealth and stability, were wiped out in a single night of bloodshed. Khalil, Chantel, his father, his siblings, and even young Tiana had been executed with chilling precision. The crime scene was a nightmare. Blood splattered across the Christmas decorations, the walls, the expensive furniture. The tree, still twinkling with festive lights, stood in stark contrast to the carnage beneath it. The forensic team moved through the house in silence, their faces pale. Even the most hardened officers struggled to process the sheer brutality of it all. And the woman responsible had vanished. Marvina Ross had slipped into the night like a phantom, leaving nothing but bodies and questions behind. Law enforcement wasted no time launching the largest manhunt the city had seen in decades. Every major news outlet plastered her face across their broadcasts. Helicopters scoured the streets, roadblocks were set up, and checkpoints were enforced. Airports, bus stations, train terminals, every exit was locked down. But Marvina was nowhere to be found. The city was divided. People whispered about Khalil's crimes, his deception, the way he had set her up and let her rot in a prison cell for nearly a decade. They questioned whether she had ever truly been the villain or if she was simply a product of the hell he had created. She was pushed too far, some murmured. What did they expect? She still killed a child, others countered. She's no better than Khalil. The debates raged on, fueled by talk shows, news segments, and social media. Was she justified? Was she irredeemable? But none of it mattered. The only thing that mattered was that Marvina Ross was still out there. And as the city trembled in fear and fascination, one question hung in the air like a curse. Where would she strike next? They found her in a rundown motel on the outskirts of Baton Rouge, a cigarette burning between her fingers, her eyes as lifeless as the bodies she left behind. When the police burst in, guns drawn, she didn't flinch. She didn't run. She simply exhaled a cloud of smoke and muttered, "Took y'all long enough." Her arrest was broadcast nationwide. Marvina Ross, the woman who had slaughtered an entire family on Christmas Eve, was finally in custody. The nation was transfixed by her story, the betrayed wife, the mother-turned-murderer, the executioner who had taken justice into her own hands. Some saw her as a monster. Others saw her as a woman who had suffered beyond reason. The trial was a spectacle. Every seat in the courtroom was filled, the press scrambling to capture the expressions of the jurors, the gasps of the audience, the cold detachment in Marvina's gaze. The prosecution laid out the horror in brutal detail, each bullet, each body, each life erased in a storm of vengeance. She didn't just kill them, the prosecutor declared. She executed them. One by one, without hesitation, without mercy. Her defense team tried to spin the story, a woman pushed to the brink, a victim of betrayal, a mind shattered by years of suffering. But Marvina herself made their job impossible. She refused to plead for her life, refused to show regret. When asked if she felt remorse, she merely shrugged. They deserved it, she said plainly, as if she were discussing the weather. The jury took less than 3 hours to reach a verdict. Guilty. On all counts. When the judge pronounced her sentence, his voice was firm, unwavering. Marvina Ross, you are sentenced to death by lethal injection. A hush fell over the courtroom, the weight of finality sinking in. But Marvina? She only smirked, her lips curling in dark amusement. She met the judge's gaze, then turned to face the sea of onlookers, the reporters scribbling down her every move, the people who would tell her story long after she was gone. I already died the day he betrayed me, she said, her voice steady. This is just the end of the story. And with that, she was led away, her fate sealed. This case stands as a haunting testament to the destruction that betrayal can unleash. Marvina Ross was once a woman who fought for love, who believed in family, who built her life around the promise of loyalty. She endured hardships most could never imagine, clawing her way out of poverty and heartbreak to build a future alongside the man she trusted most. But when that trust was shattered, when the love she sacrificed for turned into a calculated betrayal, something inside her broke beyond repair. What should have been a story of survival and redemption twisted into a blood-soaked nightmare, where justice and vengeance became indistinguishable. For years, Marvina wasted away in prison, not for a crime she committed but for one engineered by the very man who had vowed to protect her. She endured the agony of separation from her daughter, the suffocating loneliness of incarceration, and the slow, torturous realization that Khalil had rewritten history without her. He moved on. He thrived. And he erased her existence as if she had never mattered. The pain of betrayal festered into something darker, something unrecognizable. The massacre that followed sent shockwaves through the city. It was an act of revenge so brutal, so calculated, that it left the nation divided. Was Marvina a victim pushed too far, a woman who had suffered injustice after injustice until she finally snapped? Or was she, as the prosecution argued, a remorseless killer who had let her thirst for vengeance consume her soul? The courtroom became a battleground. The prosecution painted her as a cold-blooded executioner, while others saw her as the inevitable product of a system that had failed her at every turn. When the judge delivered her sentence, death by lethal injection, Marvina did not weep. She did not beg. She simply smirked, as if she had made peace with her fate long before the verdict was read. "I already died the day he betrayed me," she said. This is just the end of the story. And so, the case of Marvina Ross remains a chilling reminder of the thin line between love and hatred, justice and revenge. It forces us to ask difficult questions, about betrayal, about consequences, about the darkness that can live within us all. Did Khalil Baxter seal his own fate the day he chose deception over devotion? Could any of this have been avoided if he had never framed her, never turned his back on the woman who had once given him everything? Or was Marvina always destined to fall this far, her fate written long before the first shot was fired? What do you think? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story left you speechless, be sure to like and subscribe for more tales that drag the darkest secrets of love, revenge, and betrayal into the light.